I think the main thing that a lot of like young bands can kind of miss, we luckily have a strong group of guys and we're all very committed to the vision that we set out originally to create. Obviously, things change, you get different influences, you want to write a different type of song, but we all have kind of the same core vision about what TEMPT is and what it should be. And because of that, we're able to stick to our guns. We're able to push back when outside, influences suggest certain things that we know just kind of won't fly with us. And we're able to kind of not just go for almost, oh, it would be great if you guys did this, then you'd be huge. We're able to kind of really objectively look at like, how do we want the band to progress? Where do we see ourselves in the next few years, and how do we see ourselves? So, I think it's very important for a band that wants to have kind of any sort of success, even kind of the small amount of success that we've had now, to really stick to their guns and their vision and build a group of people, like our management. And it's important that, you build a team that also kind of understands that vision, what you want to do, so they can be advocates for you, with like a record label or with a promoter, kind of any project that gets thrown your way.
This is the Unstarving Musician podcast. I'm your host, Robonzo. The podcast features conversations with me, indie music artists, and industry professionals, and it's all intended to help other indie music artists be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Welcome, friends, musicians, fans of live music. Speaking of which, well, before I go there, thank you for joining me for another episode. It's great to be in your earbuds today. I was about to say I'm working on a piece about the return of live music. The musicians, venues, and music fans I've spoken with on the topic have the common opinion that people are very excited to get back to gathering around live music. In the few opportunities I've had to perform recently, I can see that is completely, totally, 100% true. Very much so. Two of the more interesting things that have come out of my conversations about the return of live music is that the pent-up demand has created a kind of competition among venues. At the moment, it appears that many venues feel they need to host live music to draw people to their businesses, so places that previously didn't have live music are now hosting it, or now doing so to be competitive. Seems great for everyone, more venues, more places to play, more places to listen to music, but I am curious to see what the market will bear long term. The other interesting thing comes out of Panama. A festival promoter I spoke with there observed that municipalities near us were much more willing to let expat haunts venues bring live music back than they were in allowing venues that cater to locals or indigenous. This promoter understandably finds this troubling. It kind of looks to me like discrimination, oddly, against Panamanian locals or indigenous. I wonder if this type of thing has also occurred in the U.S. or elsewhere. My wife and I recently arrived in Querétaro, Mexico, the landing point of our ongoing big adventure abroad. We left a lot of great friends and acquaintances in Panama, but we'll stay in touch and we'll return for visits related to our residency there, as well as personal and business matters there. Our arrival here in Querétaro was a little rough. Our poor dog Chico didn't do too well on his flight over. He had to travel below deck, so to speak, and the pet transport folks told us he experienced elevated stress. That was kind of my way of putting it, not their words exactly. I'll spare you some of the details they shared, but he was a little weary when we reunited, but he's doing great now. As I told a friend about Chico's day yesterday, he pooped like a champ and nipped the new maid. Yep, back to normal. I arrived with food poisoning, compliments of Copa Airlines. That's what I get for eating a coach meal with airline meat, no less. That was compounded by a sinus infection prompted by allergies. So, yep, I was a hot mess on during our first week here, but I'm doing much better now. I hope I sound better. I'm among the living again. Our friends in Panama sent us off with several going-away festivities, parties, small gatherings, and one of them, a larger gathering, included a kind of local AllStars Jam. It was a lot of fun. You can catch videos of that on the Unstarving Musician YouTube channel. I will put a link in the show notes for that if you don't already subscribe to the Unstarving Musician YouTube channel. All right, and my guest. Let's talk about my guest. My guest is Harrison Marcello. What a cool name. Of the rock band TEMPT. He's a founding member of that band. He's a guitarist and one of the principal songwriters of the band. They're based in New York City and have a love for old school 80s rock, which I believe gives them some melodic sensibility, kind of a pop sensibility. When I first heard them, I thought of Def Leppard. The curious thing is that these guys are pretty young. So I'm thinking to myself, how did these guys fall in love with the 80s sound? But, I guess it's like falling in love with the 60s sound, which we've seen in previous decades and even still today. But the band's younger audiences probably hear them and hear something fresh and new from a genre perspective. Old guys like me think, cool, that sounds familiar. I like it. Harrison and I remarkably have very similar tastes and experiences with rock music. And in our conversation, that's Chico in case you heard him. He's feeling better. In our conversation, Harrison and I talk about the upcoming TEMPT album, which was on hold due to the pandemic, and I believe is still not out yet as I record this, but it should be coming very soon. Yes, that's Chico. We also talk about the recent single by TEMPT called Living Dangerous, featuring the artist Dorothy. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. You should check it out. We talk about creating content for fans, business strategy, how the band came together, the big thing they learned from the pandemic, and we also discuss our favorite Van Halen songs. You can find everything TEMPT and Harrison Marcello at temptband.com. Okay, here is me having a conversation with Harrison Marcello of TEMPT. Harrison, thanks for joining me for a conversation on The Unstarving Musician. I really appreciate your time.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you grew up in New York, yes?
Yep. I was born and raised in New York, and I still live here now.
Did I get it right that you're from the West Side?
Yes, the West Side. I'm from the West Side, and Zach is from the East Side, and Chris is from the Bronx.
Chris is your bass player or drummer?
Bass player.
And where's the other guy from?
Well, Nick is originally from Canada. He was from Windsor, Ontario, but he's lived in the city now a while, from a pretty young age. So we've kind of given him all of us being New Yorkers, we've kind of knighted him a fellow New Yorker, even though he's not really from here.
He's honorary. That's cool. So how was it growing up there for you?
It was great. I mean, it's people. It's funny. People always ask me that, and a lot of my friends who aren't from the city, who I know from, out of state and stuff, always think like, "Oh, it must have been so cool to grow up in New York," and it definitely was really cool. But for someone like Zach, Chris, and I, we have no kind of other reference point of growing up anywhere, so it's kind of just like normal life for us. But yeah, it was obviously great to grow up here. Especially once I started getting into music and the music scene. Having access to so many different venues, from the Madison Square Gardens at the top to smaller venues like BB King's and all that type of thing, and to see different musicians and just have access to that and learn from that.
Yeah, that's nice to be in such a rich music scene. I can imagine the number of musicians and bands that you get exposed to are just almost seemingly limitless. I was listening to what I believe is your latest single that you guys did this morning, Living Dangerous, featuring Dorothy. Great track, by the way.
Thank you.
And I understand that you guys got it featured on a film called The Retaliators. Is that right?
Yep.
Congrats on that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's that was through our label, and the film was basically made by our label. They have their kind of own film division where they're working on films, and it was great to have that there, and it was great to have the feature with Dorothy, and it was cool to tie that into the movie, and it was really fun to do all around.
That's cool. I gathered that the song and the suggestion to do it with Dorothy or do it with someone sort of was the introduction to Dorothy. Have you guys had ongoing contact with her outside of that one project?
In terms of music, no, but obviously we became really good friends with her, and we have, we exchange messages all the time, and she's definitely someone we'd love to do something in the future with, especially live. If we could do a live duet of the actual song with her, would be great with her feature. And yeah, and that was an interesting little time, because that was kind of during the height of COVID when we had planned to do this in the music video and this in the feature. And our label actually suggested to us, they said, oh, you guys should maybe have a feature on your first single, for kind of all the label-y points being, you can get more ears on your song, that type of thing. We never had a feature on a song or ever even thought of having a feature. So we were a little apprehensive about it, as I think a lot of musicians might be when they first do that, thinking, oh God, we're going to have someone come in and ruin our song. It's perfect the way it is. And we weren't, I wouldn't say we were pleasantly surprised, because we became familiar with Dorothy's work, and obviously she's an amazing singer and she has some great music. But when the first, mix of that came back with her feature, we were just blown away by it, the way she matched the song. And so it ended up working out great. And I think from an artist perspective, it definitely opened our eyes up more to the possibility in the future of having, even more features on some of our tracks. And we're excited about that.
Yeah, that's cool. It sounds like it was a great experience, and I can see how it would be advantageous or eye-opening for future possibilities, and just the possibilities from that one thing. And so what's the status with the upcoming album? I know it seems like things I've been reading and hearing about you guys that it's on the cusp of release. What's going on with that?
Yeah, it's been finished for a while now. It's just as kind of a baby band as we are now, where we really need this record to build our following, and we think this record could have a huge impact on rock music and the music industry in general. So, the timing is kind of everything with releasing this record. So that's why it's been delayed a little bit, with COVID and everything, and tours getting canceled and the whole 9 yards that's been happening in the music industry. But it's definitely releasing this year now. Soon. I forgot it's January already. I was going to say it's going to be early next year. It's January. So it's going to be released soon. I think by the time you said this interview will be out, it probably will already be out.
How is it that the band came together? Because if I understand, you guys have been together for about a year. Is that right?
Yeah, we've been the core band is that what I really consider TEMPT has been together for a couple of years now. Zach and I originally had met all the way back in 2012. He actually had found me through a YouTube video, because he was working with the songwriter at the time. And basically the songwriter said to him, you need to find your partner in crime, your guitar player, songwriting partner, because I think that would help you a lot with both your writing and your music career. So he found me on YouTube back when I was just doing, covers and some like original guitar stuff on YouTube. And we had met and hit it off right away. And we had wrote a bunch of songs together and we recorded them. And that was the kind of first record that people will find under Spotify, was really just Zach and I with some musician friends of ours doing a record for fun. We both went to college, so the band we met my freshman year of college, but we were both in college, so we never really got the chance to kind of pursue the band seriously. At that point, it was just kind of a passion project for us. Once I was out of school, that's when I had contacted Nick, who Zach and I both had known in high school briefly, and contacted Nick, said, we really want to make this a serious thing now. We think we could, if we got some guys together, it could be really cool. And Nick was totally on board. And he actually suggested Chris to us. And we had tried out a couple of bass players before, but, Chris was just on another level. And he also helped with a lot of creative aspect of the band. So once we were all together, that's when I really consider the official start of TEMPT, because we all write together. It's not just Zach and I alone, and we write together. We all have a creative input, and we're kind of really all on the same page about what we believe the vision of the band is. And so far, I think, especially with this record that's coming out, we really achieved what we set out to do. And I'm really excited for people to hear it finally.
It seems especially fortuitous that you found the right guys, and who were all excited about the same type of influences. I in the first moments that I heard the song, I clearly picked up on this kind of 80s rock vibe, and I appreciate that you guys have the pop element in there and the melodic aspects of it, which is wonderful. I like all of those things a lot, and I thought, how do four young guys find one another. But you are in a really, as you mentioned earlier, you're in a really rich music community. So I guess that helped. You could have been somewhere else and it would have been a little more challenging, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, even living in a city with 8 million people or whatever it is very hard to find three other people who are dedicated to being in a band. I mean, it's definitely kind of advice for other musicians in a similar situation. It's not easy to find people who are going to be showing up to rehearsal on time, dedicating their time, potentially having to go out on the road. And in the sense, we were all very lucky that we were able to find each other, and we happen to all be kind of very laid back, chill people too, which helps a little bit. So a lot of that is just knowing when someone's the right fit, and feeling people out and making sure you get the right people in the band. And we, like I said, we were very lucky to all be able to get together, because it's been amazing.
Yeah, and I was only thinking about, you found these other guys that are, you're all into the same thing and kind of a throwback thing at that. But yes, of course, it like you said, there's this other important element, the who wants to be in a band that's like really going to go for it and is going to be dedicated to all those little things that come along with that. I want to go back to the album for just a moment because you were talking about it had been delayed. Was that largely, I imagine it wasn't exclusively, but was that largely about being able to tour to support the album?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the only reason. The album was going along great. We were getting a mix by Chris Lord-Alge, who's, as many people who are listening probably know, is an amazing Grammy award-winning mixing engineer, and we had it completely mastered. I think it was done being mastered like a month after COVID. So at that point, we already knew, okay, we're not going to be able to put this out right away because we really need to have the touring support behind it. And so that's really the only reason it's been delayed. In terms of like album, the quality of it, is it up to our standards or not? I think it was perfect. Like everything was going great. So it's definitely been a drag to have to sit on it. But I
Yeah.
think, our fans and people understand that as this really being our first record, we want to make sure it has the best release it possibly has. It would have been worse, I think, if somehow we had managed to get it done like right before COVID and released it. So we got to look at the positive of, okay, at least we didn't put it out and then we're not able to tour. So, but with the way things are going, it's a little weird with the whole Omicron thing happening now. And I know a lot of tours have been getting canceled again, but for what I've been reading, hopefully this is kind of the death throes of COVID, and all our kind of summer and spring tour plans will be back on the table.
That would be nice. And you're right, it could have been worse timing wise. At the same time, I was thinking that must have been torturous, in a way. It's been a lot. It hasn't been, in the grand scheme of things, a lot of time, but in terms of sitting on a project like that you're excited about, I'm sure it was a little maddening at the same time. You couldn't release it, but
Yeah, it's definitely maddening, but we also know we luckily all of us can see the bigger picture and be like, okay, well, it sucks, but we know that it'll be better in the long run, and will happen soon enough to
yeah,
release it.
yeah, absolutely. I read, I believe, in one of your interviews, some thoughts that you had on producing content for your fans to promote the music, that being just kind of part of the whole machine, if you will, of what has to happen for you guys to move the whole thing forward. Can you talk a little bit about the different approaches that you've taken to creating that content for your fans?
Yeah, so I think I was talking about that, especially in the context of this whole COVID thing, where you're so limited as an artist, and especially as a band where we are really a live band, where we pride ourselves on our live show and the work we put into that. And what do you do when you can't play now for basically 2 years? So much of being a live band is that interaction you have with your fans and going around the country and playing for them, and then those moments before and after the shows where you interact with them. That's kind of that's the original content piece that all bands had to do. And so we explored a lot of different areas during COVID. We did a bunch of live shows in our studio, which were really fun, where we decked it out. We bought a whole bunch of lights and decked it out, with smoke machine, and did, program the lights to our sets, and would do live streams on Facebook and YouTube, which are all still there if people want to check them out. They were really fun to do. So stuff like that. And then also just other content pieces, with doing, more covers. We did a Kanye West cover, down to smaller things where I just, will do a guitar cover for YouTube or something. For us, it's really important to interact with our fans. We were doing live streams a lot, with Q&As and that type of thing, because when you can't have that live show connection and you can't have those in-person connections, and we really value that. So we want to make sure that we do as much as we can to kind of keep our fans involved, keep them in the loop with what's going on, and give them that same kind of experience that they would have if they were still coming to see us play, a couple times a month.
And then what about, I guess, business strategy going forward? You're, kind of at this place, you've got this great product you're sitting on, you're letting things unfold with the unfortunate pandemic, and it probably has given you, I would imagine, a lot of time to look at different strategies. Or have you been focused sort of on one thing all along, getting out and touring, and thinking that other things will evolve later?
Yeah, I think for us, the main strategy right now is still going to be touring and the live show, because like I said, we really are a live band and we pride ourselves on being a great live band. And that, I think, is going to be the biggest, from a business standpoint, selling point for us, because I think anyone who sees our shows, we have a very, positive, theatrical kind of fun vibe that happens, where we put a lot of our love into the music and try to perform it always to the best that we can. That, I think, that's the biggest selling point for any band still. It's been like that for almost 60 years now, but I still think it's still the main kind of, how do you get people into your rock band or band, is you got to put on a great show for them, because people aren't going to just voluntarily go through Spotify, stumble upon your music and be sold to it overnight or even find it. So for us, the biggest thing is we got to get out touring again. And that's going to start happening in the spring and definitely the summer, when we finally do our little European stint we have. And that's going to be the biggest thing for us, especially with the release of the album. We've also been, just on the creative side, have working on a whole bunch of new music. So we have album 2, ready to go as quick as possible, because we've had, like a year and a half now to basically write an entirely new record.
That's great. It's a little point of luxury in all of this, I guess, or a silver lining. I want to go back to, you were talking about the sort of stage things or in-studio things that you did for visuals. And by the way, I have seen a couple of videos of you guys. You look great too, which is obviously helpful for the whole touring thing and trying to figure out who you are visually. So that is wonderful. I apologize if you answered some of this a moment ago. I had a little background distraction noise happening in the house behind me, but you were talking about some of the things, visual things that you'd added, lights and smoke machines in this, and I was thinking about the videos, how nice some of those look, and I'm imagining that you've done some things in-house, if you will, or in quarantine, video-wise and performance-wise, and things you put on YouTube. Have you guys done that? Have you, during these past months, did you spend a little time working to tweak or improve the appearances for online video streaming, and even just things that you record that you're going to publish, not necessarily live streaming?
Yeah, that's definitely happened. I mean, we've always been, even before COVID, we've always been very conscious about things have to look good that you do, especially online. It's kind of such a cliche at this point, but things exist on the internet forever. Everyone's heard that a million times. But we've always tried to make things look good, and that doesn't even have to be from the standpoint of, do we look good? Of course, that's also important, but it's how is the quality of the video, how's the sound quality, everything down to the heading and the titling on the video, and we do all that stuff ourselves. And I think that's really important for anyone who's in a band to think about, because that's how much like 90% of content is being consumed that way. It's just important for everyone to be conscious about, like, what's the quality of the stuff that you're putting out, how does it look, even down to just this, it's one thing, we go from like the Kanye West cover we did, which is obviously much more of a production and kind of basically a music video where we actually went to a studio and shot it, did a whole big recording of the track, and then we shot the video in a studio. Something like that for us is no different than when I just do a simple guitar cover in my bedroom for, YouTube, just to have a little bit more of a content piece and show what I'm working on. It's all kind of has to be at the same standard. Obviously there's different scaling to it, but we definitely take a high pride in the work we do, and we're not going to put out content that we feel is kind of subpar to our own standard, because we want, our fans miss us, so we want to keep giving them the best stuff that we can while we can't play.
Yeah, well, the sound is super polished production wise, so I can see the interest internally for you guys to make it all look really good too. Okay, I had another question I really wanted to ask in my mind, and it sort of escaped me here. I'm looking at some of your influences, though. We can go to that for a moment. Maybe it'll come back to me, but I'm looking at some of your early influences, and I when I heard you, I thought, well, I'm probably subconsciously thinking we surely have some of the same influences, because I've always considered myself a rock guy, although I try to listen to all kinds of things, and I don't usually do this, but I think when I was reading about them, one of the things that I read, one of the first bands on there was Van Halen, so I wanted to ask, what was your favorite Van Halen album, or is?
Oh God, that's too hard for me. It's kind of one of this, obviously, like I think like an easy pick would be something like 1984, which I really, but also the first Van Halen record. That's too hard of a question. I even like, a lot of people, give me crap about it, but I love a lot of Van Hagar stuff too. Like 5150 is an amazing record. So that's that's too hard. I'll tell you, the first couple of Van Halen songs that really got me into playing guitar and learning guitar, obviously, Ain't Talking About Love, that riff. I think anyone who's into guitar playing, especially rock guitar playing, when they hear a riff like that, they immediately go, oh, I need to learn that. Also, same with Panama, obviously. I mean, Panama was one of the first kind of, it wouldn't say hard necessarily, but it was kind of the first real riffs I learned on the guitar and was able to play. So that's why 1984 and Panama especially will always have a place in kind of my repertoire, where I don't think I'll ever forget how to play that song as long as I live.
That's great. It's really funny. I'm much older than you, and I lived through these same moments with my guitar player friends, and also with my own ears, like being enthralled with that same music, and yeah, I'm with you. I like that first, especially that first Van Hagar album.
Yeah,
so I won't give you a hard time about it.
I know they need to unite between the Van Hagar and the original Van Halen fans, because I don't get why there's so much animosity sometimes.
It's kind of funny. I kind of get it when I go, like when you talk about Test of Time, I think, well, I guess that older stuff really does hold up in many ways better. And I got to see them, both configurations. It was a lot of fun. I thought a band like them like Van Halen was lucky to have that second era, with such a guy that could fit in the way he did. All right, so you're already sitting on another album. You're just chomping at the bit, I imagine, to get this whole tour thing in support of the current release that's sitting in the queue waiting. It's almost hard to ask you this, but I'd love to ask what is next later this year. You laid out a lot of it, but is there anything that you hadn't talked about that you're thinking ahead about, either for this year or the following, even though we're just in January?
It's I'm gonna sound super repetitive, but it's really just playing live. I mean, not even from the standpoint we kind of talked about earlier about kind of as a meta strategy, or kind of the label speak of like, well, we need to get ears and eyes and blah blah blah, but we're just dying to play live. We played one show live back in October when COVID restrictions kind of loosened up for a bit before this recent surge, and it was crazy because as a band, and that's basically been playing live nonstop, and I've basically been playing live nonstop at least a few times a year since I was 18 years old. So to go then a year and a half, basically almost 2 years of not playing a live show, it was like my first show all over again. I was like nervous for the first time again, and then on top of COVID, it was like, oh, now I'm in a room with, 100 people, which also is a completely new experience again. So it was like, but it was so exciting and it was so fun. And not that I feel like we'd ever been kind of like jaded by playing live, but it was almost like a completely new experience, like doing it all over again, that now I know all of us are just like, we need to tour, we want to tour, we want to tour, we want to tour. So not even from kind of what's best for the band and our fans' point of view, for also for like our own selfish reasons. I think as soon as we can get off the ground again, once this recent surge passes in the spring and the summer, we're supposed to go to Europe and do Hellfest and Download and all those big European festivals in June. So I know we're super excited to just play again and see everyone.
I can completely understand that. I know what it was I wanted to ask now, and maybe a couple more questions if we don't run out of time. But because of the pandemic and the change in plans, and you're sitting on an album, I'm sure a lot of musicians who are in a similar space, or a lot of bands who are in a similar space, and maybe not quite at the same point of trajectory or trajectory in general. Have you guys been in a pure investment mode with the band, or have you been able to generate some income as a band or you individually during this time? And if so, what were the best sources of that? Or was it just like we've been continuing to invest and we're waiting for touring and, we'll go from there?
I mean, we're pretty much still in investment phase. I mean, a lot of the content we've produced, other than a few big things and like getting the lights and stuff, we haven't had to like put that much money into it. But we all work different. I do a lot of music work outside the band, in terms of like production and writing and that type of thing. And we all kind of generate our own revenue and pool it into the band. So, but we haven't been playing shows and we haven't had a record to sell. So, I'm sure a lot of bands are in the same position. I know even a lot of big artists are in the same position with not being able to tour for a year and a half. Yeah, we've just been in an investment period, and we're looking forward to finally going out and having the investment pay off. I mean, we know we have a great album that we're excited for everyone to hear, and the world to hear, and we have a great live show that tens of thousands of more people we feel should be exposed to. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where we've been at. It's just been kind of a holding pattern, and it looks like, I've said this before, unfortunately, like even a year ago, but it looks like we're finally almost out of the storm.
I hope so. I'll keep my fingers crossed with you. And I can appreciate where you guys have been at in your own trajectory. And the last one I had for you is, what's been the biggest challenge or learning experience in getting to this point and being ready for the release and the tour?
Well, we actually did a couple of YouTube videos about this, which people can find on our channel. I think the main thing that a lot of like young bands can kind of miss, or they can get disillusioned about or disillusioned around, is that we luckily have a strong group of guys and we're all very committed to the vision that we set out originally to create. Obviously, things change, you get different influences, you want to write a different type of song, but we all have kind of the same core vision about what TEMPT is and what it should be. And because of that, we're able to stick to our guns. We're able to push back when outside, influences suggest certain things that we know just kind of won't fly with us. And we're able to kind of not just go for almost, oh, what would be great if you guys did this, then you'd be huge. We're able to kind of really objectively look at like, how do we want the band to progress? Where do we see ourselves in the next few years, and how do we see ourselves? So, I think it's very important for a band that wants to have kind of any sort of success, even kind of the small amount of success that we've had now, to really stick to their guns and their vision and build a group of people, like our management and someone like Chris Lord-Alge, who, mixed our record and, creatively consults with us and kind of helps us. It's important that, you build a team that also kind of understands that vision, what you want to do, so they can be advocates for you, with like a record label or with a promoter, kind of any project that gets thrown your way. So I think that's been kind of the main ingredient for us to kind of stay on track, especially during this crazy time and going forward.
That sounds great. Harrison, I really appreciate you spending time with me again today. It was nice getting to know you for the brief amount of time we got to talk here. And I know that your fans, both existing and prospective, can find out more about you guys at temptband.com. And it looks like all your socials are there. Definitely on Spotify. I'll put all that in the show notes. And yeah, man, it was good talking to you.
Awesome. That was great. Thanks for having me.
This episode was powered by Podcast Startup. I've spoken with many podcasters about the struggles of starting a podcast, and they told me their main challenges revolved around fear, procrastination, and tech. I know what that feels like, yet I've recorded and published over 260 podcast episodes. I overcame these challenges and can help you do the same. Here's how I can help you. I've taken a look at all the things that worked, all the things that are still working, and all the things that didn't work, and I have put together a curriculum that will fast-track you to launching, marketing, and sustaining your podcast so that you can share your expertise, garner expertise from others, dig deep into a special interest, help others, get more website visitors, expand your personal brand, grow your network, or any number of other things you may want to do by starting a podcast. So you will be able to start, enjoy, and benefit from your very own podcast. To learn more, go to unstarvingmusician.com/podcast startup. Not only will you learn how Podcast Startup can help you bring your podcast to life, but you'll also get free actionable tips on starting a podcast right to your inbox. Again, go to unstarvingmusician.com/podcast startup to learn more. This episode was powered by Bandzoogle, the platform for musicians and bands to build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle features powerful design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, and tickets, detailed fan data, integrations with social networks, and more. Plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes a free custom domain name. Try it at bandzoogle.com and use the promo code ROBONZO, ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code ROBONZO. If you love what I do, if you find value in what I do here on the podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor or the show notes for this episode to learn about options for offering your support. The Unstarving Musician accepts direct financial support, and we very much appreciate it, but there are several other ways to support the podcast and help keep it going. Again, you can learn more about those options for supporting the Unstarving Musician podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. Did you know you can help other independent musicians find the Unstarving Musician by following or subscribing on your audio platform of choice? Well, now you do, and it really does help. And if you have feedback, please go to unstarvingmusician.com to get all my contact info. You can text me, call me, email me, leave a voice message right there on that page. Just go down to the bottom of the page and you'll find everything you need to know. I really would love to hear any of your comments, suggestions, questions, whatever you've got. And you can find links to just about everything talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. All right, I'm peacing out. Thank you for listening and sharing with your musician friends and fellow indie music bands. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.